Francisco Pizarro, a man driven by ambition and dreams of glory, started his life in poverty in Spain. One day, while working as a swineherd, he overheard tales of a land rich in gold and treasures, known as the Incan Empire. This moment sparked a fire within him, a burning desire to leave his humble beginnings behind. In 1532, Pizarro arrived in South America, ready to face incredible challenges. With just a small band of men, he navigated dangerous jungles and mountains, all while searching for wealth and power. Rumors spread of his daring attempts to confront the Inca ruler, Atahualpa. When Pizarro finally met him, he proposed a deal that would change everything. But as the tension built, betrayal lurked in the shadows. With each decision, Pizarro risked it all, knowing that the empire's fate rested in his hands. Could one man's ambition truly conquer a vast civilization? Pizarro's journey is filled with suspense, daring choices, and shocking twists. How his relentless quest led to the fall of an empire and changed the course of history forever. But what transformed Pizarro into a figure of brutality? To understand this, we must examine his early life, shaped by poverty, ambition, and the fierce desire to rise above his circumstances. Pizarro's journey to conquer the Inca Empire was not just a quest for gold. It was a complex tale of desperation, survival, and the dark choices that can emerge from the depths of ambition. Hello friends! Today, we're sharing some rare and interesting facts you probably haven't heard before. Every detail we've included will add something fresh and surprising to what you might already know. Early life. Francisco Pizarro was born in Trujillo, Cáceres, Spain, in a region that is now part of modern Extremadura. He was the illegitimate son of an infantry colonel named Gonzalo Pizarro and a poor woman named Francisca González. While the exact date of his birth is not clear, it is thought to be in the 1470s, likely around 1475. Because his family had little money, he did not receive much education and grew up unable to read or write. His father fought in various military campaigns, including in Navarre and Italy. Pizarro's mother married later in life and had another son, Francisco Martín de Alcántara, who accompanied Pizarro during the conquest of Peru. Interestingly, through his father, Francisco Pizarro was related to the famous conquistador Hernán Cortés, being his second cousin once removed. This connection would play a role in shaping Pizarro's ambitions in the New World. Early career as conquistador. On November 10, 1509, Francisco Pizarro left Spain for the New World with Alonso de Ojeda, aiming to explore the Urabá region. Pizarro took part in Ojeda's unsuccessful attempt to establish a colony, and ended up in charge of the remaining settlers until he decided to abandon the effort and leave with the survivors. He then traveled to Cartagena, where he joined Martín Fernández de Enciso's fleet. In 1513, he accompanied Vasco Núñez de Balboa on his historic journey across the Isthmus of Panama to reach the Pacific Ocean. The following year, Pedro Arias de Vila became the new governor of Castilla de Oro, taking over from Balboa. Over the next 5 years, Pizarro became a trusted friend of de Vila, who assigned him a repartimiento, giving him control over local natives and cattle. When de Vila wanted to eliminate Balboa due to mistrust, he ordered Pizarro to arrest Balboa and bring him to trial. As a result, Balboa was executed in January 1519. For his loyalty to de Vila, Pizarro was appointed as the mayor, alcalde, and magistrate of the newly established Panama City, serving in these roles from 1519 to 1523. Expeditions to South America. The first effort to investigate western South America began in 1522 with Pascual de Andagoya. The native people he met spoke of a gold-rich land called Viru, located along a river named Piru, which later became known as Peru. These stories were shared by Garcilaso de la Vega, a Spanish Inca mestizo, in his book Comentarios Reales de los Incas published in 1608. Andagoya made contact with various Native American leaders, some of whom he claimed were sorcerers and witches. He reached the San Juan River, which is now part of the border between Ecuador and Colombia. However, he fell ill and had to return to Panama. After his return, he spread exciting tales about Piru, a prosperous land to the south filled with gold, often referred to as the legendary El Dorado. These stories, combined with news of Hernán Cortés's success in Mexico, caught Pizarro's interest and led him to plan expeditions southward. In 1524, while still in Panama, Pizarro teamed up with a priest named Hernando de Luque and a soldier called Diego de Almagro to conquer the southern territories. They agreed to split the wealth from their conquest equally. Although their agreement was only verbal, they named their project the Empresa del Levante, with Pizarro leading the expedition, Almagro supplying military and food resources, and Luque handling finances and provisions. First expedition, 1524. In November 1524, Francisco Pizarro set out on his first expedition to conquer Peru. He left Panama with about 80 men and 4 horses. The team included Juan de Salcedo as the standard bearer, Nicolas de Ribera as the treasurer, and Juan Carvalho as the inspector. Diego de Almagro stayed behind to recruit more men and gather supplies, planning to join Pizarro later. Initially, the governor of Panama, Pedro Arias de Vila, supported the expedition. However, Pizarro's first attempt ended in failure. His men sailed down the Pacific coast but only reached as far as Colombia. They faced terrible weather, shortages of food, and conflicts with unfriendly natives. During one of these encounters, Almagro lost an eye to an arrow. The hardships were reflected in the names the Spanish gave to places they passed, such as Porta de Salva, desired port, Porta del Hambre, port of hunger, and Punta Quemado, burned port. After the Battle of Punta Quemada, which ended badly for them, Pizarro decided to return to Panama. Second expedition, 1526. 2 years later, Pizarro, Almagro, and Luque began planning a second expedition, which they finally got permission for from Governor de Vila. However, de Vila was cautious because he had lost faith in Pizarro. Eventually, they gained his trust and a new governor, Pedro de los Rios, took charge in July 1526. He approved the expedition and would join Pizarro in Peru later on. On March 10, 1526, Pizarro left Panama with 2 ships, 160 men, and several horses. They reached the Colombian San Juan River. After arriving, the group split up. Pizarro stayed to investigate the swampy coasts, while Almagro went back to Panama to gather reinforcements. Pizarro's main pilot, Bartolomé Ruiz, sailed south, crossed the equator, and captured a raft with natives from Tumbes. To everyone's surprise, the raft carried textiles, ceramics, and pieces of gold, silver, and emeralds. This discovery became the highlight of the second expedition. Some natives were taken on board as interpreters. Ruiz returned to the San Juan River to find Pizarro and his men exhausted from their struggles. Soon after, Almagro arrived with supplies and around 80 new recruits from Spain, lifting the spirits of Pizarro and his tired men. They decided to return to the territory Ruiz had found. However, their journey back was difficult due to strong winds and currents. They eventually reached Atacames on the Ecuadorian coast, where they encountered a large population of natives who had recently come under Inca control. Unfortunately for the conquistadors, these people appeared numerous and defiant, so the Spanish decided against entering the land. The famous 13. After much arguing between Pizarro and Almagro, they decided that Pizarro would stay at a safer location called Isla de Gallo, near the coast. Almagro and Luque would return to Panama to gather more reinforcements. This time, they had proof of the gold they had found and news about the wealthy land they had explored. The new governor of Panama, Pedro de los Rios, had heard about the problems Pizarro faced and the deaths of some settlers who had gone with him. Worried that another expedition would fail, he turned down Almagro's request for more resources. He also sent 2 ships, led by Juan Tafur, to bring Pizarro and his crew back to Panama. Pizarro was determined not to return. When Tafur arrived at Isla de Gallo, Pizarro made a stand, drawing a line in the sand and declaring, "There lies Peru with its riches, here, Panama and its poverty. Choose, each man, what best becomes a brave Castilian. For my part, I go to the south." Only 13 men decided to stay with Pizarro, earning the nickname, the famous 13, Los Tracy de la Fama, while the others went back with Tafur. Ruiz left on one of the ships to join Almagro and Luque in their efforts to gather reinforcements. After the ships departed, Pizarro and his men built a makeshift boat and traveled 25 leagues north to La Isla Gorgona, where they stayed for 7 months until new supplies arrived. Back in Panama, Pedro de los Rios, after much persuasion from Luque, finally agreed to send another ship. However, it was only to bring Pizarro back within 6 months and to abandon the expedition. Almagro and Luque saw this as an opportunity and left Panama without new recruits to join Pizarro at La Isla Gorgona. When they met, the three decided to continue sailing south, following the advice of Ruiz's native interpreters. By April 1528, they reached the northwestern Peruvian region of Tumbes. Tumbes became the first success the Spanish had longed for. The local inhabitants, the Tumpis, welcomed them with hospitality and provisions. In the following days, 2 of Pizarro's men, Alonso de Molina and Pedro de Candia, explored the area and returned with reports of great wealth, describing silver and gold decorations around the chief's home and the warm welcome they received from everyone. The Spaniards also encountered the Peruvian llama for the first time, which Pizarro referred to as little camels. They continued to hear about a powerful king who ruled the land they were in, reinforcing their belief that Tumbes showcased the riches of Peru. Pizarro and his men decided to return to Panama to prepare for a final conquest with more recruits and supplies. Before leaving, they sailed south along the coast to see what else they could find. Historian William H. Prescott noted that they passed through places they named Cabo Blanco, the port of Paita, Secura, Punta de Aguja, Santa Cruz, and Trujillo, which Almagro would later found. They reached the 9th degree of southern latitude in South America for the first time. On their way back to Panama, Pizarro made a brief stop at Tumbes, where 2 of his men chose to stay and learn the local customs and language. He was also given 2 Peruvian boys to teach Spanish, one of whom was baptized as Felipillo and later became an important interpreter, similar to Cortés La Malinche in Mexico. The other boy was named Martinillo. Their final stop was at La Isla Gorgona, where 2 of Pizarro's sick men had stayed. One had died. After being away for at least 18 months, Pizarro and his followers finally anchored off the coast of Panama to prepare for the final expedition. Capitulation de Toledo. When the new governor of Panama, Pedro de los Rios, refused to approve a 3rd expedition to the south, Pizarro and his associates decided that he should go to Spain and appeal directly to the king. In the spring of 1528, Pizarro sailed from Panama to Spain, accompanied by Pedro de Candia, some native people, llamas, and samples of fabric, gold, and silver. Pizarro arrived in Seville in early summer. He met with King Charles I, who was in Toledo at the time, and shared stories about his expeditions in South America. Pizarro described the land as rich in gold and silver, emphasizing that he and his men had bravely explored it to expand the Empire of Castile. The king was impressed by Pizarro's accounts and promised to support the conquest of Peru. While the king was away in Italy, Queen Isabel signed the Capitulation de Toledo on July 6, 1529. This document granted Pizarro the right to conquer Peru. He was named the governor, Captain General, Adelantado, and alguacil mayor of New Castile for 200 leagues along the newly discovered coast. This appointment gave him significant authority, leaving his associates in less important positions, which later angered Almagro and created tensions between them. One condition of this grant was that within 6 months, Pizarro needed to gather a well-equipped force of 250 men, with 100 coming from the colonies. This requirement gave Pizarro time to return to his hometown of Trujillo, where he convinced his brother Hernando Pizarro and other close friends to join him on this 3rd expedition. Francisco de Orellana, who would later travel the entire Amazon River, also joined the group. Pizarro's half-brothers Juan Pizarro and Gonzalo Pizarro, as well as another half-brother, Francisco Martín de Alcántara, decided to join him. His cousin Pedro Pizarro, who served as his page, was also part of the team. When the expedition set out the following year, it consisted of 3 ships, 180 men, and 27 horses. Pizarro struggled to gather the required number of men outlined in the capitulation. In January 1530, he quietly left from Sanlúcar de Barrameda and sailed to the Canary island of La Gomera. There, he met his brother Hernando and the remaining men in 2 vessels that would take them back to Panama. Finally, Pizarro's third and last expedition departed Panama for Peru on December 27, 1530. Conquest of Peru, 1532. In 1531, Pizarro arrived again on the coasts near Ecuador, specifically in the province of Coque and the region of Esmeraldas. Here, he managed to collect some gold, silver, and emeralds, which he then sent to his partner, Almagro, who was still in Panama looking for more recruits. Soon, Sebastián de Belalcázar joined Pizarro with 30 men. Pizarro aimed to reach Tumbes, the same destination as his earlier expedition. But first, he had to deal with the Punian natives in the Battle of Puna. This battle resulted in 3 or 4 Spanish soldiers being killed and many others injured. Shortly after, Hernando de Soto, another conquistador who had joined Pizarro, arrived with 100 volunteers and horses to support him. Together, they set sail for Tumbes, only to discover that it had been abandoned and destroyed. The local chiefs explained that the fierce Punian tribes had attacked and looted the settlement. Since Tumbes was no longer safe, Pizarro decided to venture inland in May 1532. He established the first Spanish settlement in Peru, called San Miguel de Pura, and created a repartimiento, which was a system to allocate land and labor among Spanish settlers. After leaving 50 men in charge of the settlement, led by Antonio Navarro, Pizarro continued his quest for conquest with 200 men on September 24, 1532. When they reached Zaran, he sent de Soto to a Peruvian garrison at Caxas. De Soto returned after a week, bringing an envoy from the Inca, along with gifts and an invitation to meet the Inca ruler. Atahualpa, the Inca emperor, had recently defeated his brother Huáscar in a civil war and was resting near Cajamarca. Pizarro arrived in Cajamarca on November 15, 1532, with only 110 foot soldiers, 67 cavalry, 3 arquebuses, and 2 falconets. He sent Hernando Pizarro and de Soto to meet Atahualpa in his camp. Atahualpa agreed to meet Pizarro in the plaza of his fortress the following day. Fray Vicente de Valverde, along with a native interpreter named Felipillo, approached Atahualpa in the central plaza of Cajamarca. The friar spoke about the true faith and the need to pay tribute to Emperor Charles V. Atahualpa responded defiantly, stating, "I will be no man's tributary." This arrogance proved fatal, as he underestimated the Spanish forces, who numbered fewer than 200 compared to his army of 50,000. Atahualpa's refusal led Pizarro to attack the Inca army on November 16, 1532, during what became known as the Battle of Cajamarca. The Spanish forces were victorious, capturing Atahualpa and executing his 12-man honor guard. By February 1533, Almagro arrived in Cajamarca with an additional 150 men and 50 horses to reinforce Pizarro. Despite Atahualpa fulfilling his promise to fill a room with gold and 2 rooms with silver, he was convicted of 12 charges, including the murder of his brother and plotting against Pizarro. He was executed by garrote on August 29, 1533. Francisco Pizarro and de Soto opposed Atahualpa's execution, but Pizarro agreed due to rising tensions among the soldiers, especially from Almagro's camp. De Soto was away on a mission during the trial and expressed his disapproval upon his return, stating that Atahualpa should have been taken to Spain for judgment. King Charles later expressed displeasure over Atahualpa's death, recognizing him as a monarch and emphasizing that the execution was unjust. After Atahualpa's execution, Pizarro advanced toward Cusco, accompanied by Calcucamac, a prominent Inca general who supported Atahualpa. Following Atahualpa's death, Manco Inca Yupanqui joined Pizarro. During his exploration of Cusco, Pizarro was amazed by its beauty and wrote to King Charles I, describing it as the greatest city he had ever seen, claiming it was more beautiful than any city in Spain. The Spanish conquered Peru by entering Cusco on November 15, 1533. Although Jaja was established as the provisional capital in April 1534. Pizarro later founded Lima on January 6, 1535, considering it one of his greatest achievements. By early 1536, Manco Inca, with an army of possibly 100,000, began a siege of Cusco. Smaller Inca forces targeted other Spanish strongholds. Over the years of warfare, Incan military leaders learned to adapt to Spanish tactics and developed effective counter-strategies, particularly against the Spanish cavalry. Incan soldiers would hold their positions until the Spanish cavalry charged. Then retreat into canyons where they could trap the Europeans and attack with prepositioned forces. This new strategy resulted in many Spanish casualties, contrasting with earlier battles where the Inca had been at a disadvantage. Despite winning most battles, the Incan inability to take Cusco, defended by only 200 Spanish soldiers with gunpowder weapons, marked a turning point in favor of the Spanish. After defeating Almagro's forces during the Battle of Las Salinas in 1538, a conflict arose between Pizarro and Almagro over control of Cusco. Spain had granted Almagro the governorate of New Toledo and Pizarro the governorate of New Castile, leading to disagreements over their territories. Almagro was ultimately defeated and executed, while his son, Diego, known as El Mozo, was stripped of his lands and left in financial ruin. Atahualpa's wife, Cuxirame Aclo Yupanqui, who was 10 years old during the events in Cajamarca, remained with Atahualpa during his imprisonment. After his execution, she was brought to Cusco, renamed Dona Angelina, and became the concubine of Francisco Pizarro. By 1538, she had given birth to 2 sons, Juan and Francisco, with Pizarro. Death. On June 26, 1541, a group of 20 armed followers of Diego de Almagro II, known as El Mozo, attacked Francisco Pizarro's palace in Lima. They killed Pizarro and forced the frightened city council to name Almagro as the new governor of Peru. Many of Pizarro's guests escaped, but some stayed behind to fight against the attackers, who numbered between 7 and 25. While Pizarro was trying to put on his armor, his defenders, including his half-brother Martín de Alcántara, were killed. Pizarro managed to kill 2 attackers and injured another as he attempted to escape. A chronicler of the time, Agustin de Zarate, noted that Pizarro fought bravely until he was too tired to keep using his sword. He was then struck fatally in the throat. As he lay dying, he reportedly drew a cross on the ground with his blood and kissed it. Later examinations of Pizarro's remains showed that he had suffered many stab wounds to his head and neck, along with defensive wounds on his hands and arms. Initially, his body was buried in the courtyard of the cathedral. At some point, his head and body were separated and placed in different boxes buried beneath the cathedral's floor. In 1892, as part of the Columbus anniversary celebrations, a body thought to be Pizarro's was taken out and displayed in a glass coffin. However, in 1977, workers renovating the cathedral found a lead box in a sealed niche. The box was inscribed with a message saying it contained the head of Marquis Don Francisco Pizarro, who discovered and conquered the kingdoms of Peru and presented them to the crown of Castile. Forensic experts from the United States, led by William Arth Maples, examined both bodies and found that the remains displayed for nearly a century had been wrongly identified. The skull in the lead box showed signs of multiple sword wounds and matched the features of Pizarro's portraits from his lifetime. Legacy. Through his marriage to Quispe Sisa, Francisco Pizarro had a son named Francisco, who married his relative, Inés Pizarro, but they had no children. After Pizarro's death, Inés Yupanqui, who was both an Inca princess and the favorite sister of Atahualpa, married a Spanish nobleman named Ampuro. They moved to Spain, taking their daughter with them. This daughter, Francisca Pizarro Yupanqui, was later legitimized by imperial decree. On October 10, 1537, she married her uncle, Hernando Pizarro, in Spain. Another son of Pizarro, also named Francisco, was born to Dona Angelina, one of Atahualpa's wives whom Pizarro took as a mistress. This son, however, died shortly after arriving in Spain and was never legitimized. After invading the Inca Empire, Pizarro destroyed their state and ruled the region for nearly a decade, leading to the decline of local cultures. The Incas' traditional polytheistic religion was replaced by Christianity, and many locals were reduced to serfdom under Spanish rulers. Pizarro is often criticized for ordering the execution of Atahualpa, even after receiving a ransom payment that he kept for himself after paying the Spanish king what was owed. Many Peruvians, especially those of indigenous descent, view him negatively. Although he was once seen positively in history books for introducing Catholicism and creating a privileged class mostly composed of people of Spanish descent. Sculptures. In the early 1930s, sculptor Ramsay MacDonald created 3 statues of a conquistador-like foot soldier, complete with a helmet and sword. The first statue was intended to represent Hernán Cortés but was rejected by Mexico. It was then taken to Lima in 1934 and repurposed to represent Pizarro. Another copy of this statue is located in Wisconsin. A mounted statue of Pizarro was erected in the Plaza Mayor in Trujillo, Spain, created by American sculptor Charles Rumsey. This statue was presented to the city by Rumsey's widow in 1926. Originally, Pizarro's statue was located near Peru's government palace. However, in 2003, after years of requests for its removal, the mayor of Lima, Luis Castañeda Lacio, agreed to move it. Since 2004, the statue has been placed in a park surrounded by the recently restored 17th-century walls in the Rimac district, facing the Rimac River and the government palace. Palace of the Conquest. After returning from Peru with great wealth, the Pizarro family built a grand palace in the Plateresque style on the corner of the Plaza Mayor in Trujillo. This palace was commissioned by Francisca Pizarro Yupanqui and her uncle and husband, Hernando Pizarro. It features busts of them and other notable figures. The palace quickly became a recognizable landmark in the plaza. The opulent structure has 4 main sections, representing the Pizarro family's coat of arms, which is displayed on one of its corner balconies. The building is decorated with intricate plateresque designs and balustrades. In popular culture, Pizarro is the title character in a dramatic tragedy by Richard Brinsley Sheridan, first presented in 1799. Sheridan based his play on the German tragedy Die Spanier in Peru by August von Kotzebue. He also plays a significant role in the theater piece and film The Royal Hunt of the Sun, which focuses on Pizarro's spiritual journey and personal relationship with Atahualpa, rather than a factual account of history. The film maintains the character-driven dialogue of the play while showcasing respected actors of its time. 1969. Pizarro appears as a major supporting character in the animated series, The Mysterious Cities of Gold, where he is depicted as obsessed with finding one of the legendary 7 lost cities of gold. In the English version of this series, the character is voiced by Maurice Podbray. In literature, Pizarro is featured in the historical novel, The Gold of Caxamalca by Jacob Wasserman. He is also a character in Surya Kandal Sona, The Golden Tears of the Sun, a Bengali novella by Premendra Mitra. In this story, Pizarro is portrayed as a cunning fortune hunter who conquered Peru through treachery and a Machiavellian approach, putting his own interests above morality. The protagonist, Gonaram, an ancestor of Ganesham Das, fights against the Spanish conquistadors to liberate Peru but ultimately fails in his mission. Randall Garrett, primarily known for his science fiction writing, authored the novelette Despoilers of the Golden Empire. The story is crafted to resemble a futuristic space invasion, but it actually recounts Pizarro's conquest of the Incas. Garrett stated that while the language might mislead readers, every detail of the story is historically accurate. If you found this video enlightening, please give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. What are your views on Pizarro's legacy? Don't forget to subscribe to Informative History for more intriguing insights into the past. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.